Hey guys, hi everybody. So listen, I'm gonna go ahead and jump right into what I'm here for. I decided to do a live stream today, and I don't do these too often, but ever so often I need to. And you guys, please, first of all, forgive my appearance. I know I look like who killed the dog and why, but it's been a rough week for me. It's been a rough week for me. So let's just talk a little bit. This is not going to be super heavy. It's not going to be negative. It's going to be just really some amazing life lessons that came to me this week. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jay Stone. I'm a master brand strategist, and I help business owners create profitable brands online. So, this week was pretty rough because I lost a client and friend, LaTanya Tibbs. So, for those of you who don't know LaTanya, many of you guys might know her as the V Bar lady. She made soap for the hoo ha. That was one of her main things, right? And she passed away this week after a long battle with cancer. But the thing is, she's been my client for over 10 years. I've known her for longer than that, but she's been my client for 10 years. And we lost her this week. But while she always talked about me, coach, my coach, you're my coach, my coach, um, and you're my mentor. And we kept in touch even when she wasn't actively coaching. Because one thing about me is that once I'm your coach, I'm your coach for life. But one of the things that she doesn't I think she never knew how much she taught me, and so I want to share some of those lessons with you too on this day, on this day. So let's talk about when life be life in you, right? As they say, in the internet streets, life be life in. When life comes for you, life is aggressive, life can beat you up. There's just some things that we need to do to learn how to act, okay, and to know how to just deal with it and manage it. So the first thing I want to talk about, lesson number one, is you can't control what happens to you. Now, Tanya and I really bonded because she was one of the co-authors in one of the books that I wrote, and I'll see if I can't pull up a picture of that. She's a co-author in one of the books that I wrote, um, and in it she tells a really interesting. Okay, here's a picture of the book. Sorry, she tells a really traumatic story about her childhood. And if you don't know, we wrote this book. It became a best-selling book, whatever. And she had a very, very, very traumatic childhood, right? And we wrote about it in the book. Going forward, not to get into the trauma, at the end, she had a very, very tough battle with cancer. Okay. All right. And she couldn't control what happened to her in her childhood, right? She couldn't control what happened to her with cancer. She had no control over those things. But your attitude and how you manage those things and how you navigate those things, right, is the true testament to who you are, right? It's the true testament to how you live. One of the things about her is that she was never going to live in the past, right? She never spent her time living in what happened. If you didn't get to know her, you didn't know what happened. Sometimes we spend too much time living in what happened in the past. And sometimes that's negative. Sometimes the things that happen in the past is positive, but we live in the past so much that we don't embrace the present, right? You have to embrace the present. It's about how you live and what's happening to you, what's happening in your life today. How do you need to show up today, right? Not what happened. You can't control that. It's gone. You can't redo it and you can't relive it. But today, what can you manage today? What can you handle today, right? You had a car accident last week. You have no control over that. It already happened. Okay. But how can you move forward, right? Heal your body, get your car repaired or get a new car. The things is, what is the next step that moves me closer to my goal or gets me back on track? So you can't control what happens to you. That was huge. But here's the next part. Okay. It's not about what happened to you. Life is about all the good shit is in the middle, right? All the good stuff is in the middle. So if you think about a sandwich, if you guys have kids, right, you know that if you give a kid, a toddler, a sandwich, right, they're going to eat the meat They're going to take the bread off and take this off, and they're just going to eat the meat and the cheese and the stuff in the middle, right? Since I had gastric bypass surgery, right, one of the things I do is have to eat a lot of protein. So a lot of times we get a hamburger, but you remove the bun, right? Uh, Life is about the stuff that happens in the middle, right? If you look at a bookshelf, right, they have book ends, right? They have one that's holding up this end, one that's holding up that end. The good stuff is in the middle, right? That's where the books are. Even if you read a book, right, this cover and there's the cover, the good stuff is in the middle, okay? So one thing I learned about Tanya is she had a rough start, she had a rough end, but in that middle, she lived, baby. She lived in other countries. She dated great looking men that was internationally. She had a successful business. She built great relationships with her friends, and she served her clients. The good shit for her was in the middle. Okay. Lesson number 3. You're always enough for the right people. So when Tanya first came to me and she was like, I know that I have the knowledge that people need. I know I have a product that people need. But I think people won't accept me. It's like when I go and sit on panels, people look at me because I don't talk proper, you know. I'm from the hood, I like blonde hair, I just don't feel that I'm polished enough, right? And my training for her was you are enough for the right people. When they're judging you that way, they're not the right people. When they're worried about how you talk versus worried about what this soap is going to do for the hoo-ha, they're not the right people. When they're worried about whether or not you got blonde hair versus whether or not you can heal these fibroids, right? They're not the right people. A lot of times we spend a lot of energy trying to impress the wrong people. Okay. A lot of times we spend the energy trying to impress the wrong freaking people. So it's super, super important for you to focus on who are the right people. The right people are going to accept you just as you are. Okay. The right people are not judging you off of superficial things because they're looking for something deeper and something greater. And I think that is super, super, super important for you to know that. Okay. So that was a huge lesson. So here's the other one. This is my favorite lesson. My favorite lesson. Positivity is a choice. Okay. Tanya had every reason, right, to be angry. She had every reason to be bitter. She had every reason to be disgruntled, right? To be angry. She had every reason, and she chose not to. And she chose that every day. Even when she called me and she was upset about something, even when she called me and things that were terrible that had happened, her immediate reaction and response to things was, it could be worse, right? I can do better. Things will get better. It's not going to stay like this, right? And so positivity is a choice. And here's the thing, it's super easy to become negative. I was having a conversation this morning with my mastermind group and my mindset coach. And we had the conversation about how you get to, right? How you get to. And a lot of times we complain about things. We complain about our kids getting on our nerves, our husband getting on our nerves, our clients are getting on our nerves. But what if you didn't have kids? What if your children were taken from you? What if your spouse and you separated? What if you didn't have clients that were giving you a check, right? You don't have to do it. You get to do it, right? And that was just a really positive lesson in terms of mindset, right? So instead, before we stop and complain about the negativity, and Tanya was so excellent at this, right? Before we focus on what's negative, how can we focus on what's positive? What's the positive piece you can get out of that? Because things could be different and they could be worse. And that was what she used to always say to me. It could be worse. All right. So lesson number 5, and there's only one more lesson because like I said, I'm not going to hold you guys all day. Share your people. Share your people. There were so many people that Tanya introduced me to, shout out to Carmen and So, and people that I've gone on to build a relationship with and do business with. And then there are people that I shared with her, right? People are your most valuable resource. People think it's money and, equipment, resources. It's your people, right? And so when we got the message that Tanya had passed, there was a list of people that I sent a message to. Why? Because all the people knew where they had gone and had taken her services. All my sisters knew exactly who she was. Several of my other clients knew who she was. Co-authors in the book, of course, connected to her, my god sister. And so there's just a whole list of people. People is the most valuable resources. Don't be so stingy with them. If you know somebody that can help somebody or move somebody to the next level, introduce them, right? It's super important to introduce and connect, because that's what makes you powerful. That's what makes you stronger. A lot of people think it's how much money you have, or how much the people are the most valuable resources that you can share. So share your people. Don't be so stingy with your people. Don't feel like, oh, if I introduce them to this person, then they're going to be as successful as me. No, if they introduce you to that person that helped you with your success, then your network becomes more successful and your network becomes more powerful. Okay, so share your people. And number 6, which is the most important thing to me, is that people should know that you love them. Okay, people should know that you love them. One of the most important things for me with Tanya is she knew that I loved her. So when major things happened in her life, even when she wasn't actively coaching with me, I got a phone call because she knew that I loved her. And knowing that people, when she got on Steve Harvey Thunderdome, right? When she was featured on Thunderdome with Steve Harvey, I was the first person she called. When she had her viewing party, I was the person that she called. When her abuser took his own life, she called me in her moments of deep despair and in her moments of great joy. She called me. And so when she was really, really sick, she had moved back to Atlanta just before her transition. And I had remembered talking to a friend, and I was like, why, I wanted, if I had known that things weren't going well, I would have reached out. And she said, Jay, she said she was coming to see you. And I think, when she's in the final stages of life for her transition, she thought of me. I was one of the people that she wanted to see. And there was this great joy that I was one of those people that she held dearly. And then there was a great sadness that I didn't take time out of my life and my schedule to just make sure to double check. But then I know that she knew that I loved her, right? She knew it. And so knowing that people love you, right, isn't about you saying I love you. It's about showing up in ways that matter to them, right? It's about showing up in ways that matter to them. I showed up for her when there was no exchange for money. I showed up for her when it wasn't convenient for me. I showed up for her when she called, right? Because I loved her. Because I loved her. It's important for people. A lot of people, they know. I told them, well, you should know. People say you should know. Some people need to be told that you know them. Some people need gifts to show you love them. The 5 love languages, right? People should know it. And don't just assume that they know it because this is how I show love, right? They should know it deep down in their soul without question, based on how they need to be loved. Okay, so just to recap before I get too emotional here, it's been a rough week for me. Okay, just to recap, when life be life in you, okay, here's a few lessons that I learned from my friend, okay, and client. Okay, you can't control what happens to you, but you're fully responsible for how you react to it. Okay. Number 2, life is what happens in the middle, right? Think about a sandwich. It's the stuff in the middle. Tanya couldn't control what happened to her early in life. She couldn't control what happened to her at the end of her life, but she made, great meat, a great sandwich out of the stuff in the middle. And number 3, you're always enough for the right people. A lot of times we're trying to impress the wrong people, and this is why we feel inadequate, right? If you focus on showing up and being authentic, you're always enough for the right people. Number 4, positivity is a choice. Negative things happen. negative thoughts come up, negative energies happen, we can make a choice to shift out of that space or to remain in that space. And I'm not talking about going through whatever your process is. I'm talking about consciously making an effort to move forward. All right. Share your people. People are your greatest resources, right? You can introduce somebody to somebody that can change their life, and you are responsible for that, right? So share your people. They are an amazing resource, and people should know that you love them. It's super important. It's super important that you love people the way that they need to be loved. Okay. And so, one last note, please, guys, shout out to LaTanya Tibbs for how she lived and how she loved. And when you live and you love, you never lose. You never lose. That's it for me, guys. Hopefully, this was beneficial for you guys. It's been a rough week. Thank you for joining me.